Zeit lernen der Englisch. Wir übersetzen heute Deutsch-Englisch oder Englisch, Entschuldigung, Ukrainisch. Englisch-Ukrainisch oder Deutsch-Ukrainisch, Aline?
English.
Englisch, Englisch-Ukrainisch, okay. Alles klar. Доброе утро всем. И начинаем с переводом. Кто-то мне может подтвердить, здравствуйте, Виктор, что перевод работает на немецкий язык? Айно, работает? Нет? Окей. Доброе утро еще раз всем. Приветствую вас всех. Мне очень приятно, что вы все пришли сюда. Сегодня я как бы могу гордиться, что мы соединяем 5 стран. Я сейчас из Соединенных Штатов. У нас есть представители из Украины. 6 стран, извините. Из Украины, из Грузии, из Австрии, из Германии. И, конечно, Украины я уже, по-моему, назвал. 6 стран. Доброе утро из Нью-Йорка. Добрый день вам всем. И тематика, с которой мы сегодня будем заниматься, чрезвычайно важна для успешного внедрения национальной инвентаризации лесов. И у нас сегодня есть возможность еще раз послушать о том, где мы находимся в Украине. Я думаю, что в этом году и в прошлом году мы имели большой прогресс в определенную сторону. Коллеги из Украины будут сегодня об этом говорить. Далее мы имеем возможности от представителя европейского сети по национальной инвентаризации лесов, господина Томаса Швантнера, услышать о том, как эта организация видит стратегии по использованию прироста в ходе национальной инвентаризации лесов. И, в конце концов, это то, что нас сегодня больше всего интересует. Это опыт из Румынии. Один здесь. И я очень рад, что мы можем сейчас начинать, по-моему, наше мероприятие. Кто-то еще хочет высказаться по поводу открытия? Это нет. И таким образом я бы хотел передавать слово господину Томасу Швантнеру со своим докладом по тематике использования прироста с точки зрения сети, европейской сети по национальной инвентаризации. Пожалуйста, господин Швантнер.
Okay, yes, thank you. So I will start with my presentation. Yes, my name is Thomas Krantner. I'm working for the Austrian Forest Research Center, Department of Forest Inventory. And in the last years, we made a study on the improvement, harmonization of forest equipment in Europe. This study was conducted under the NFI umbrella, the European National Forest Inventory Network. As a background, I would like to give you a brief overview about the history and activities of the NFI network. It was founded in 2003 with 70 members at that time. Now, the last year, 2023, we had 33 different member organizations from about 30 countries. About 30 projects were conducted during this time under the NFI umbrella, and this yielded more than 40 publications until now. And the main challenge that was identified is the topic of harmonization, because the NFIs apply different methods, different definitions, and to come to comparable results, estimates at the European level, this harmonization process is quite relevant to have comparable information at a larger scale. Next slide. Yes, an overview, brief overview about the harmonization work that was done until now. Some examples: forest available for wood supply was an harmonization issue. Then also above ground biomass, growing stock, and stem volume, and the most recent developments regarding increment. We have, this was done in 2 specific contracts with the Joint Research Center of the EU. You also see here the links to the respective publications where further information about this harmonization work is available. And the overall aim of this harmonization work is to provide sound statistical comparable estimation for forest information at the European level. Next slide, yeah. And coming now back to this NFI study on increment, we had 4 main objectives. The first one is was to describe the current definitions and methods applied by the involved NFIs. That's always, if we make a harmonization work, then in the first step, we try to get an overview about the situation in the participating NFIs. In the next step, we developed a harmonized definition and method for net annual increment. So net annual increment was the aim of this study. And this net annual increment is obtained as a subtraction of a gross annual increment minus the annual natural losses. In the third step, we applied this harmonized definition and method and calculated volume, but also above ground biomass increments. And these results were calculated for nuts regions by tree species and for broad forest types, meaning coniferous forests, broad-leaved forests, and mixed forests. And yeah, nuts regions, this is a classification, regional classification system of the European Union for statistical purposes. And what we are always interested in when we make such a harmonization task is a comparison of the national results, here the national increment results, with the harmonized results, to see how relevant and how large the impact of harmonization is actually. Yeah, the next slide. We had some previous works where we could already rely on in this study. This was mainly done in the cost action use wood. A book was published, and then there is also a special issue in the Annals of Forest Science, where several publications on the increment topic have been published. Now coming back to the NFIs. Sorry. Yes, that's the correct slide. Yes, thanks. We have, when we have a closer look on the methods and definitions that are applied by the NFIs, quite some differences. And a very basic one is the use of temporary versus permanent plots. Because on the one hand side, we have increment coring. On the other hand, we have consecutive measurements for the different visits of the sample plots at the different time points. There are also differences between the growth components that are actually included. We can distinguish between survivor trees, trees that are in the sample plot at both points in time. Then we have trees that enter the sample and trees that leave again the sample due to cutting, or other trees that die and leave the set of living sample trees. There are also differences regarding the representation because per hectare, because it can be related to the first time point or the second time point of the measurement. We have different pH thresholds, of course, different sample tree selection methods, for example, angle count sampling, or circular plots. Concentric circular plots are quite often used. And there, since there's volume calculation, volume increment calculation, or above ground biomass increment calculation involved, there's also a difference in the models, in the tree parts that are covered by these models. For example, some countries calculate only the volume of the stem. Others additionally include the volume of large branches, for example. And yes, there are also differences, of course, regarding the assessment of losses and mortality between the NFIs and the harvesting. Yeah, this is a slide that was actually originating from the Usewood study. There we made an inquiry among European NFIs, 25 European NFIs, to see which plot types are used for increment estimation. We see that most of them are using permanent plots, some temporary plots, and there's also in several countries a combination of both permanent and temporary plots in use. Regarding the temporary plots and the increment scoring, there are several other considerations that have to be taken into account. For example, because we are relying on samples, if all sample trees are cored or only a subset, if this additional data, which data about the cored trees is necessary, if the increments of yearlings is measured already in the field, or if lab measurements in the laboratory are made, and at which position at the tree the measurements are taken. So there are several issues that have to be considered, but it also depends what is the purpose of this increment measurements. Yes, the next slide, please. Thank you. And coming back to the harmonization, we have established among the European NFIs within NFIN what we call a definition-based harmonization approach. This means that we have on the one hand side the country level definitions, and then on the other hand a reference definition, usually established based on a common agreement among the NFIs. And between these two sides, we have deviations. And these deviations are solved by so-called what we call bridging functions. And once these bridging functions are applied, NFI estimate is considered to be in accordance with the reference definition. When we have a look on the harmonization of increment, we harmonized the gross annual increment, the annual natural losses, and as a result, then the net annual increment. Gross annual increment was decided among this group to include all growth components, meaning survivor and in-ground trees, and also cut and mortality trees. For survivor and in-ground trees, the increment was obtained as difference between the 2 time points. Also for, and for cut and mortality trees, it's a bit different because these trees leave the sample. It's the volume at time point of cutting, or volume at time point of mortality, minus volume at time point 1. But I have to say that this volume of time point of cutting and mortality is usually approximated by the NFIs at the mean point between these 2 time points, 1 and 2. We calculated means per year, so these are mean annual increments in cubic meter per year and also per hectare values, cubic meter per hectare per year, and tons per year and tons per hectare per year. It's for above ground biomass. The annual natural losses were defined as trees that die between these 2 time points due to natural causes and remain in the forest unharvested. And again, means per year, cubic meter per year, cubic meter per hectare per year, tons per year, tons per hectare per year. We decided to go for a final value method. This means that the next slide can be shown. Thank you. We decided to go for a final value method. So the time point 2 is mainly relevant. And it means that the forest plots at the time point 2 are taken. And this per hectare sample tree representation of time point 2 is used for the surviving trees and for the new sample trees. And for cut and mortality trees, we decided to use the latest measurement that is available as living tree, which is in this case the time point 1. The DBH threshold of 7.5 centimeters were used. So we were concentrating more on this economically merchantable, more interesting part of the tree. And we also made specifications of the tree parts that are included regarding volume increment. Here the stem volume for conifers up to a top diameter of 7 centimeters. Was calculated, and for broadleaves, additionally, the large branches were included down to a diameter of 7 centimeters. And above ground biomass, it includes all tree parts above the ground for both conifers and broadleaves, but only the perennial foliage, so the needles of conifers. Yes, and this is a brief overview about our results. We saw once again that this harmonization measures have relatively have a relevant influence on the estimates. It was between -10 and +25% compared to the national results. When we had a look on these harmonized results, we noticed interesting increment patterns in Europe, showing that the highest increments are found in Central Europe, and towards the north, south, west, and the east, there were decreases, lower increments found. The range in the study area was between 1 and 12 cubic meter per hectare per year for volume increment, and 1 to 6 tons per hectare per year for above ground biomass increment. We noticed differences between the forest types. Conifer forests in most cases had the highest increments. In some cases, we had exceptions. in mixed forests, where the increment was almost the same or slightly above the conifer forests. And the most important tree species in the study area were conifers, pinus, and Pitea that contributed 55% of the gross annual increment. And broadleaves here, the genera Fagus, Quercus, and Betula were the most relevant ones and contributed altogether 20% of the gross annual increment. So this was a brief overview about the results. We are working currently on a publication, and yes, hope that we can complete this work, publication work soon. So I say thank you for your attention and hope that there were some interesting information for you in this presentation that I could contribute to your meeting. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, господин Швантна. Очень интересный доклад. И я думаю, что будет у нас, наверное, вопросы со стороны наших участников. Я хотел отметить в связи с вашим докладом, с вашим выступлением, что Украина и организация Леспроект и Центр национальной инвентаризации лесов стали членами этой сети. И хочу сейчас тут выразить по возможности интересный вклад, с одной стороны, со стороны Украины, но и возможности получения информации с вашей сети по европейскому сети национальной инвентаризации лесов. Спасибо Хайно Полай для поддержки и всех коллег в сети для поддержки. У меня впечатление после вашего доклада, что довольно
impressed. One thing that I noted is that there is still significant difference in approaches between NFI, but you try to harmonize them. One slide, 2016, do they refer to the results of harmonization? Maybe I missed something. There was a table on...
Есть такой результат? Общий. И вопросы коллегов, пожалуйста. Сначала Томас. Hallo. Ich gehe mal in den deutschen Kanal, den englischen Kanal. Thomas, it was a question to you actually.
Sorry.
I have seen quite a broad variety of approaches in national forest inventories in different countries. Also. And it's difficult, as we understand from your presentation, to harmonize. Still, you are going this approach, and what are the final then results? So can you say this?
Можна сказати, що ось річний приріст по лісах Європи, чи існує така цифра? Ну, ми зараз запровадили цей підхід по 10 країнах, так що не можна говорити, що є результати по всій Європі, але на майбутнє ми ставимо таку мету на основі спільних визначень. Шановні,
Пожалуйста, у вас есть вопросы? Есть? Бада, пожалуйста.
Thank you, Walker. Thank you, Thomas, for presentation. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Thomas, for presentation. I have just a general remark on your presentation. I hear that like Georgia, Ukraine also joined this NFI, this network, and I'm pretty happy about this because a lot of quite a lot. I mean, personally, me, I have advantages. I mean, to be member of this network. So, especially to get some kind of information from other members of NFIN. And my just general question is, I pretty sure, and I guess that in future, all member countries, including new countries like Georgia and Ukraine, will participate in research as to present their own information, figures, I mean, especially we already concluded our first national forest inventory, and so we have modified and updated information and would be happy to join fully in any stage and any research activities that NFIN will conduct in future. Thank you for this. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, generally this harmonization work and the research work within NFIN, it was until now always like this, that countries that wanted to participate in a certain topic usually took this opportunity and participated. There are also, of course, this not all works when you go to this slide where the publications have shown. It's clear that not always all countries from Europe participated, but in general, the way is to include additional countries to get a better status of harmonization in Europe. Yes.
Okay, Heino, and then Vitali, please.
Thank you, Thomas. You explained the different categories of sampling trees, named surveyor trees, ingrowth trees, cut trees, mortality trees. And in case of temporary plots with core boring, it might be quite difficult to calculate the increment for cut and mortality trees because you don't see them in your sample. Do you see any solution for this problem?
Yes, this is a very important question. That's true. That for temporary plots, you see only the, let's say, the time point 2. And these trees that are present on this at this time point consist actually in terms of a permanent inventory of the survivor trees and also of the ingrown trees. But they're all, on the other hand, is two other components of cut and mortality trees. And here we
Т1 це вирубані і ті, що загинули, тому ми залежимо тут від даних НІЛ. Деякі зберігають інформацію по деревах, які залишалися на цій ділянці, деякі виключають інформацію по деревах відумерлих. Ну і якщо говорити про НІЛ, то тут зрозуміла річ, використання тимчасових ділянок вносить значну міру невизначеності, якщо порівнювати з постійними ділянками.
Okay, thank you very much. Vitaly.
Дуже дякую, пане Віталію.
Доброго дня. Дякую пану Томасу за цікаву і інформативну презентацію.
Thomas, for very interesting, informative presentation.
У мене питання наступне. Ви в презентації
I have, the following question.
Показали, що
In your presentation, you indicated that there are harmonized methods to evaluate above ground biomass. Let me ask you if any research has been made that could help using other methods such as remote sensing to incorporate the measurements of the tree stems.
Thomas, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you understand the question?
No, sorry, I only.
I can repeat in English if necessary. Okay.
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Thomas, thank you for presentation, and my question concerns the one aspect. You pointed that during NFI project, you defined the methods for the estimation of increment of above ground biomass. Of course, it's from the National Forest Inventory data, but have you maybe information about the vice versa researches, if such increment of above ground biomass is defined, for example, by remote sensing methods, is there research about defining the increment of the tree stems from the increment of above ground biomasses? Modeling of such process, please.
Yeah, in this study, we only used sample plots and terrestrial sample plots, but not remote sensing approaches. This was not part of our study, but for the future, it would be, could be interesting to have this information as a ground reference for remote sensing applications from the plots.
У меня еще вопрос есть, Томас, если можно. Вы используете то, что вы сейчас показывали, подход собирать национальные данные и их анализировать.
National data and then analyze them. Maybe this question goes beyond the scope of your presentation, but what if your organization, your network, put in additional effort into harmonizing of national forest inventories approaches? Maybe you have some recommendations that you can address Ukraine so as it tries to align its approaches to pan-European approach for annual growth measurements from Ukraine.
Did you understand?
Sorry, is this question for me?
Yeah, it was for you, yes.
Okay, so I know I'm not able to understand.
Once again, okay.
Sorry.
Your organization is now using the approach collecting information, national data, and trying to put them together into a kind of a harmonized system, adapting here, adapting there, and so on and so on. All this is fine and well noted. Thank you very much for your presentation again. But someone could understand there should be attempts from the side of your organization to harmonize the approaches from the very beginning. So to go back to the countries and say, listen, this is, so to speak, a kind of a very good approach in measuring and implementing national forest inventories in general. We are recommending you going this way because then it makes it much easier to have a harmonized picture on all Europe. In this context, the question to you, would you see it feasible or possible to give to Ukraine certain maybe recommendations how they should go ahead with the national forest inventory and especially with measurements of annual increment?
Yeah, this is an interesting question because this is so the more or less the two sides, because we have on the one hand country level NFIs that have the time series, sometimes quite long time series, and now we want to have a comparable estimate from the different NFIs. There is, in some cases, yes, feedback from this harmonization process, which was, for example, also regarding the pH threshold, where we see that NFIs, we had a common reference definition including 0 centimeters, so measuring from a height of 1.3 meters that NFIs implemented some additional assessments to cover also these trees below the DPH thresholds. So in general, these harmonized definitions that we have within this NFIN group provide a guideline how definitions could be implemented in other NFIs, yes.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation again and for your answering.
Thank you, and sorry for not understanding.
Everything's fine. Thank you very much. Now we go on then to the next point of our agenda for today, and this is presentation of Ukrainian colleagues, or a little overview in order to, especially for Господин Marin, especially for Mr. Marin, to understand what's going on currently in Ukraine, and maybe to remind and to recall for everybody else where we are now. So I hand over the floor to Mr. Andrei Shamrai to present an overview about current state of the art of national forest inventory in Ukraine. Please, Andrei.
Yeah, hello to everyone. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Andrei Shamrai. I'm a head of National Center of Ukraine. Which is a part of Ukrainian Association. So I will open my presentation. Do you see it?
Not yet. Maybe coming. Your internet connection is a bit poor, actually. Andrea, we are waiting. Maybe it's coming. It's here. Yes. Your
Thank you.
screen is here. Yeah.
So,
Дивіться,
on
не
this,
презентація екрану.
No.
Включи презентацію.
Я вроді включив презентацію. У мене пише, що вона показується.
Email
Андрій
account.
Ігорович, ви увімкнули демонстрацію одного вікна. Увімкніть демонстрацію всього екрану.
Угу. А зараз?
Oh, voilà.
Окей. Thank you. So, let's start with slide number 2. So on this screen, you see a list of reported legislative documents and resolutions in the process of national forests in Ukraine. The National Forest Inventory established in Ukraine legislation in 2020. In 2021, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine approved the procedure for conducting the National Forest Inventory, marking the beginning of its first cycle. Due to Russia's military aggression, conditions for the inventory changed. Necessitating legislative adjustments. In early 2023, the government decided that the national forest would continue even during periods of focusing on accessible and safe areas. The National Forest Inventory follows rules set by laws and government decisions. These rules outline how the inventory is done and how it's funded. They also cover things like making the data available to everyone in a format that's easy to access. And what happens during times of war or emergency. Next slide. The history of forest inventory in Ukraine began in 2000. With pilot and regional projects. Regional was conducted in the Sumy and Ivano-Frankivsk region from 2000 to 2015. Covering an area of approximately 1 billion hectares. The first.
Не рухается презентация, да, Андрей.
Мы сейчас на третьем слайде. Все нормально. The first national forest inventory in Ukraine was conducted in 2021.
Okay.
So, brief overview of what NFI is: a selective statistical survey. It is a forest mask of Ukraine on a scale of 1 to 10 million. To establish the primary network of sample inventory plots across the country, a grid of inventory squares measuring 5 by 5 kilometers has been formed. Each inventory square is designed to contain a group of 4 sample inventory plots grouped into inventory transect.
Andrei, we still see the second slide. Is it okay?
I can. Maybe,
Нет, это плохо. У меня 4.
maybe I can present this presentation, okay?
Да, Галина, если можно.
Тоді ви, будь ласка, вийдіть із розширеного екрану, я тоді.
Угу.
Зараз.
Так, 4 слайд.
Okay.
So I will continue. To the primary network of sample inventory plots across the country, a grid of inventory squares measuring 5 by 5 kilometers has been formed. Each inventory square is designed to contain a group of 4 inventory plots to an inventory transect. Each transect each transect is randomly located within the boundaries of 1 inventory square, and it is assigned to 1 5 panels. Inventory transects are measured according to the specific time panel corresponding to a 20% annual sample intensity of the total number of inventory transects with a 5 inventory cycle. The sampling design anticipates that the set of plots for every year forms its own regular grid, allowing вам погано чути мене? Можливо, в мене проблеми з зв'язком. Ну, давайте я продовжу тоді на англійській. Слідуючий, якщо можна, слайд.
Andrei, выключайте. Turn off the video, maybe it's a bit better.
Да, turn off video, please.
Ага.
Voila.
Галин, тоді, якщо можна повернутися до минулого слайду. So, the inventory plot is circular with a radius of 10.62 meters. 1262. And an area of 500 square meters. Within its boundaries, 3 circular are located to ensure proportional time expenditures on measurements of trees of different diameters, as well as 2 microplots for measuring seedlings and natural regeneration. Located away from the center of the inventory plot, to avoid damage to small during service. Але наступний сайт. Tariff trees are selected for age group at the height of 3 meters. The core is screwed into the tree trunk, holding it in the middle of the trunk at 90-degree angle.
I think, Andrei, your connection is very
Ну,
poor.
на жаль, я нічого не можу зробити з
No, давайте ми
So,
No, I think I have a proposal. We can switch over to Vitaly, and Vitaly will follow up on it. Maybe his connection is better, sorry to say. Andrei, would you agree?
так.
Okay, Vitaly, go ahead.
Колеги, я, напевне, продовжу українською, щоб бути швидше. Наразі, як Андрій сказав, це стандартний метод вимірювання вибірки extraction of цих sample core і здійснюється поза межами ділянки на так званих тарифних деревах, які є середніми деревами для насаджень. Всі керни, всі sample core вибираються і пакуються в спеціально заготовлені контейнери, доставляються до центру інвентаризації, де досліджуються у разі необхідності для визначення віку і повторного визначення віку і приростів. Наступний слайд. В 2023 році Центр національної інвентаризації провів інвентаризацію в 17 областях, які були доступні з точки зору безпеки робіт. Загалом протягом року закладена рекордна кількість для України ділянок, це майже 3000 інвентаризаційних ділянок. Під час інвентаризаційних робіт було зроблені виміри близько 6400 кернів, деревних кернів, на яких визначалися вік та прирости за 5 і 10 років. Загальна кількість за період з початку національної інвентаризації складає приблизно 9000 кернів. На сьогодні вибрано і проаналізовано Центром національної інвентаризації. Щодо визначення приросту, варто згадати досвід регіональних інвентаризацій, які були проведені в 2 адміністративних областях, що розміщені в різних природних зонах. Це Івано-Франківська, переважно Карпатський гірський регіон, і Сумська область. На сході це Полісся, природна зона Полісся та лісостепу у рівнинній частині. Всього було проведено переобмірів в останній період проведення регіональних інвентаризацій. Це десь близько 400 інвентаризаційних ділянок в гірських умовах і понад 650 в рівнинних умовах. На основі цих вимірів, будь ласка, наступний слайд. На основі цих вимірів були отримані перші для України оцінки приросту запасів насаджень. Звичайно, що вони є сьогодні публічними і розміщені на сайті Національної інвентаризації, проте можуть дискутуватися і використовуватися лише зважаючи на відповідні похибки через зазначений малий обсяг вибірки. Оцінки, які наведені на слайді, можна назвати консервативними, оскільки зміни об'єму визначалися лише для тих дерев, що збереглися живими на інвентаризаційних ділянках, так званих survivor trees. Приріст для дерев, що досягли порогових значень діаметру on growth чи відмерли, mortality trees, або були зрубані, cut trees та інших типів дерев не враховувався. Тому такі оцінки є консервативними, але попри це ці значення є доволі вражаючими. Наприклад, оцінка Annual Increment for Spruce поточного приросту для ялини в Карпатах співставна для значення приростів цієї деревної породи зробленої німецькою інвентаризацією 2012 року, Bundeswald Inventur 2012. В той же час, коли для нормування обсягу лісокористування лісове господарство України до цього часу користується середньою зміною запасу, so-called average change of stand stock, а ще він називається в Україні так званим середнім приростом, average increment, то оцінки поточного приросту, annual increment, отримані регіональними інвентаризаціями, є набагато вищі, що показано на діаграмах внизу слайду. Тому подібні оцінки є суспільно чутливими і мають бути достовірними, щоб бути предметом публічної, відкритої дискусії щодо інтенсивності лісокористування. І перед тим, як передати слово своєму колезі для резюме, а напевне мені доведеться його зробити через зв'язок самому, тоді не передаючи це слово, я зазначу одну методичну особливість. По-перше, на інвентаризаційних ділянках, як зазначав пан Андрій, проводиться виділення окремих насаджень. Тому українська національна інвентаризація має можливість отримувати оцінки приросту запасів для насаджень певних порід, як це показано на слайді. І разом з тим, аналогічні за формулою оцінки були отримані для приросту сукупностей дерев певних порід, як це роблять більшість інвентаризацій. Такі розподіли, зрозуміло, є дещо відмінними, вони є також у нас оцінені. Наразі ми їх не демонструємо для сьогоднішньої зустрічі, але я хотів би в процесі дискусії деяку методичну розділення щодо цього підходу отримати, скажімо, дискусію з нашими колегами. І врешті, зважаючи на останній слайд, і зважаючи на публічну чутливість значення приросту, фактично порядок національної інвентаризації декларує необхідність проведення переобмірів ділянок. Відомості про приріст, відпад, рубки будуть подані після завершення 2 циклів інвентаризації лісів. Іншими словами, основним методом визначення приросту в Україні є проведення переобмірів ділянок. Оцінка приросту за даними аналізу деревних кернів розглядається національною інвентаризацією як така, що повинна вивчатися в рамках наукових досліджень ходу росту деревних порід. Але публічна оцінка на основі цих наукових досліджень не може замінити проведення переобмірів і визначення приросту на основі повторних обмірів інвентаризаційних ділянок. Останній слайд. Дякую за увагу. Якщо є запитання, готовий відповісти.
Спасибо, Виталий, за обзорную информацию и особенно вашей презентации по поводу исследования прироста информации. Я передаю слово сейчас первый, по-моему, был Аксель. Нет, Аксель не снял. Хайну тоже снял. Кто будет из вас? Никто? Аксель,
No
Хайну.
one has any questions to ask now? No.
Извините, я видел ваши руки.
I thought I saw some hands raised. Marin, maybe you have a question. Heiner and Marin. Marin, probably. will come up with his.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation, Andrei and Vitaly. And my question, I have a couple of questions, in fact, one related to sampling design and one related to sample course. Related to sampling design, there are the same sampling design, the grid density is the same all over the Ukraine?
Щільність однакова по всій Україні на ділянках, чи існує відмінність в щільності по сітках? 5 на 5 кілометрів, правильно я зрозумів? Повсюди, пане Віталію?
Якщо пан Андрій не відповідає, то я можу відповісти, пане Андрій.
Чесно, в мене продовжується зв'язком проблеми, я почув
Тоді я
частину
відповім.
питання.
Тоді я відповім. Так, вибірка є однаковою, інтенсивність вибірки є однаковою для території всієї України. Було проведено моделювання різних мереж з відповідною оцінкою, передбаченням точності, які можуть бути отримані з загальних запасів. І серед прийнятних варіантів, яка відповідає також можливості виконання однією бригадою робіт в одному адміністративному регіоні, одній адміністративній області, вибрана мережа 5 на 5 кілометрів. Вона відповідає очікуваній точності визначення запасів в рамках 1% по країні і по лісистих областях в рамках 3-5%. Тому що Україна має і мало лісистих,
1% in less forested areas. But generally, as far as Ukraine is concerned and its main forested regions, we believe that this accuracy is fine.
Вопрос был такой, density везде одинаковый, Виталий, конечно. Сеть регулярная по всей Украине. Второй вопрос, пожалуйста.
Друге запитання.
Georg, your second question, please.
May I ask the second?
Можна вже
Question?
друге ставити? Так.
Да.
Так, будь ласка.
So the second question, it's about the sample course. Do you measure the sample course only in the field, or you have some laboratory work and more precise estimate of the width of the ring and so on, and the age, of course, because it's very important, of the trees?
Дозвольте, я відповім на це питання.
I'll try to answer. Yes, we did field measurements concerning 5 and 10-year increment. We don't do core in labs. We
Okay.
don't.
Okay, thank you. That was
Спасибо.
from my side.
Андрей.
Yeah.
Спасибо, Георга. Передаю Хайну Полае слово, пожалуйста.
So over to Heine.
Yeah, unfortunately, I could not follow the presentation from Andrei because of bad internet connection. My question is, please, could you repeat, Vitaly or Sergey, Andrei, how many increment sampling trees do you have per plot? How many cores do you bore per data collection point?
Виталий?
З вашого дозволу я продемонструю швиденько екран.
If you don't mind, I'll briefly share my screen to answer your question.
Давайте.
Зараз мій екран видно.
Can you see the screen I'm sharing now?
Yes.
Так.
Наразі
Currently,
Давайте на презентацію. Віталій, на презентацію розширяй.
а зараз презентація.
Ні, там.
От таким чином, так?
uh-huh. That's
На екрані
better. You see the application, and you see that every plot is broken down into two stands. Outside of that sample, we take at least one, or better yet, two trees. You can see that outside of the plots, the black spots are tariff trees, the so-called tariff trees that we use to bore cores out. So for every dominant species, one or two trees outside of the plot are used to extract cores of.
Okay, thank you, Vitaly.
Спасибо, колеги, за презентацію.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, for your presentation. Anyone else would like to make a comment or ask a question? If not, then I will ask Georg for his presentation. We are all ears waiting for your presentation. How do you do that in Romania?
Hello again. Thank you, Volker. Volker, I think. Yeah. Tree sample course of the National Forest Inventory in Romania. My name is Gheorghe Marin. I am responsible for National Forest Inventory in Romania. First, I will start with some general presentation, short presentation of Romanian NFI. Then I will present some, let's say, information about the extraction of the tree sample cores, processing of this sample cores, and how we use this tree sample cores in our NFI. Next, please. So Romanian NFI is a continuous forest inventory. That means with 5 years cycle. After each cycle, we make remeasurements in the same sample plots because we use mostly permanent sample plots. We use a systematically sampling grid with different densities. In the mountain and hills regions, we have a grid density of 4 to 4 kilometers. And in the plain regions, the grid cells are 2 per 2 kilometers. We measure permanent sample clusters of 4 sample plots, something similar as you have in Ukraine, I noticed. So we have 31,201 permanent sample clusters and 124,804 sample plots. Next, please. So the reason that we have different grid density in our NFI is because of the very different forest cover in the plain areas where the forest cover is very low, about 5%. And in the mountain and hilly areas, as you notice here in this map, the forest cover is much higher. Next, please. So this is a permanent sample cluster, consists of 4 sample plots, and dimension, let's say, of the cluster is a square of 250 meters, the line. Next, please. So these are the measurements that we make in each sample plots. It's quite similar, not quite similar as you have in Ukraine, but let's say there are we use the same method of concentric circles, and we measure in each circle some specific trees according with the dimension, the tree diameter at breast height, starting with these small circles of 1 meter radius, where we measure the regeneration, small trees in regeneration, or with minimum height of 10 centimeters, and finally we use this larger circle of 500 square meters, where we measure the largest trees in Romanian NFI. Of course, as the other NFIs in Europe, we collect a lot of information about forest sites, forest type, forest soils, and so on. And we collect also core samples. It was very important for the first NFI cycle, because as you mentioned already in your presentation, you cannot estimate the forest increment based only on the one measurement, NFI measurement in first NFI cycle, because usually in the NFIs that use permanent sample plots, the forest increment is based on successive measurements. So by making difference between the volume of the certain trees measured in a second cycle minus the volume of that specific trees measured in first NFI cycle. Next sample, next stamp, please. Slide. Okay, so extraction of the tree sample cores. We have more than 50,000 incremental cores collected in Romanian NFI cycle 1, in first NFI cycle. We use Pressler increment borer with internal diameter of 5 millimeter and length of 40 centimeters. The core were bored at 1.3 meters from the ground, parallel with the counter line. It's important to mention this, because otherwise could be errors because of the contraction or extension of the wood density and so on. Next, please. The number of trees appropriate to each sample plot from which cores were taken depends on the number of species in that sample plots, such that for one species, so if it is only one species in the sample plot, we collect 3 or 4 cores. Otherwise, 2 or 3 cores per species were collected. For each tree identified as a core provider, only 1 incremental core was collected. When 2 obvious cohorts exist in the same permanent sample cluster, for each cohort, 2 increment cores were extracted. Next, please. Next slide. Okay. The trees from which cores will be extracted were selected randomly, conditioned by the following constraints. The trees are located within a 25-meter radius from the center of the sample plots. So in the largest circle, because we don't collect sample plots from the trees that are remeasured in the 500 square meter circle. The trees belong to the dominant or codominant canopy class. The diameter at breast height should be equal or larger than the average dBH of the sample plots and larger than 12 centimeters. So we don't collect sample cores from trees smaller than 12 centimeters diameter. The trees do not exhibit exterior damages, exposure of diseases, or significant electricity. Next, please. Now, here is something different, as I noticed that you proceed in the Ukrainian NFI. After extraction, the increment cores are not analyzed in the field. They are stored in a rigid plastic case to avoid damage during transportation, because all the analysis on the sample cores, we make this analysis in the laboratory, and you will see how we proceed. Also, a field file attached to each plastic case were recorded for the permanent sample cluster, sample plot species, and 2 dBH, one measured on the direction of the core and one perpendicular to the core, because it's possible to have an elasticity of the sample trees, and we try to avoid the eventual errors that occur because the elasticity of the tree. Next, please. This is an example how we store in the field the sample cores in the rigid plastic cases, and how we fill in the field files. This way of working allow us to identify very precisely with the number of the case. You see here 83 and 31, the number of the cases, numbers of the cases, and here the same number of the sample cores were recorded in the field files. Next, please. Now I will present some information about the processing of the tree sample cores, which is very important to obtain very accurate information about the width of the ring, each ring, and their successions, to be able to identify as precise as possible the age of the tree and the increment of the tree. To obtain this information, the incremental cores were processed using a 4-step procedure similar to Le Bourgeois and Meroen. The steps supplying the width of each ring and their relative location within a core are mounting of the sample core, sanding, measurements, and cross-dating. Next, please. Mounting of the sample cores on a solid support on which physical enhancements are executed. We use a wooden board with a dimension of 620 millimeters length, 19 millimeter width, and 18 millimeter width. On each side of a board, 8 channels were curved. That means 16 channels per board. The channels are of width 5 millimeters and depth of 3 millimeters. Here in the right side, you can see one wooden board as is used in mounting the sample cores. Next, please. Each channel of the wooden board is painted with a slow drying wooden glue from the vinyl acetate family to ensure that the increment core are not moving once mounted. Staples are used, so we use staples to fix, to be sure that the sample cores are not moving. The increment cores were mounted on one board if less than 16 cores per permanent sample cluster were collected, or on 2 boards otherwise. If the incremental core was received broken, the parts were mounted on the board in the order mirroring the natural succession. After mounting, the glue was left to dry for at least 2 days. Next, please. Next step is sanding of the sample cores. The aim of this operation is to enhance the differences among the rings. First, it's a pre-phase preparing for sanding the whole wooden to remove the use and remove the used staples. Here in the left image, you can see that the staples are removed, and then in the right, the wood case with no staples on. Next, please. Here are the main operation of sanding. So we use a sanding machine. Here in the left side, there are 3 phases. First, we make coarse sanding with a sandpaper grit of 50, then a fine sanding with a sandpaper grit of 240, and extra fine sanding with a sandpaper grit of 400. Coarse sanding stops when the support wooden board is reached by the sanding paper. Fine sanding prepares the core for extra fine sanding, which reveals the cellular anatomic level details of the wood, of the sample core wood. Next, please. After the final sanding, the wooden board is cleaned by blowing air from an air processor, here in the right side image, and in the left side image, you can see how the sample cores are after the sanding. Next, please. A graphical procedure based on high-resolution scanning of incremental cores are used for measurement of the ring width. First, we check the sanded sample cores for possible defects. That means knots, missing part of the core, and so on. Everything is stored on, let's say, Excel table, and where all the information are introduced, and we can see all the defects or I don't know, any problem that can occur after sending the sample cores. Next, please. So the next operation is scanning of sample cores. Each wooden plate was scanned with a flatbed professional scanner Epson at 2400 dpi resolution. The image type is 24-bit color. Time for scanning for one wooden plate, it's about 3 minutes. And the one image has 25 megabytes. Next, please. Next operation is cropping scanned wooden board. We use an IRFAN view program. It's incorporated in the core recorder program that we use for measure the tree rings. Next, please. So individual increment core is selected and cropped from scanned wooden board. In this way, with the red here, this core is cropped. And then, next, please. It's analyzed. First, before we start the analyzing of each individual sample cores, we check the database to see, as you see here, with the red in the right lobe or part of the image, that are the same number of sample cores to be sure that not even one sample core is missing. Next, please. Okay. The annual ring are identified and measured using core recorder program. This core recorder program is very performant. It seems that it's very difficult to measure the width of the trees, to identify and measure, but it's not quite so, because we can zoom in and zoom out. Next, please. Next slide. Okay, here you can see that zooming in and zooming out, we can see very detailed information of each sampling ring, and where that little cross is put on each edge of the sampling ring. When we put that, okay. This, by measurement of the ring width, results dot post file for each sample core, like you can see here, and a lot of information are provided by this program, core recorder program, in this post file, which is introducing C Dendro program, which runs some tests and results the age of the tree. So next, please. Okay, this is a very important operation, cross-dating sample cores. The aim of this operation is to ensure that each measure ring is allocated to the correct year by matching the ring width pattern among trees. References curves are developed iteratively by pooling series of rings with high intercorrelation for each species and region. A reference curve is obtained from cores with clearly visible rings and coefficient of correlation larger than 0.55. Within a 10 cores are used, minimum of 10 cores are used for development of a reference curve. The cores are cross-dated while measured. Missing of false ring is shown with a poor correlation, which triggered their investigation with various statistical tests and using pointer years. What is this pointer years? Probably you know, where the a major increment or a very low increment is registered, let's say. And this allows determination of the age of the tree, which is the main aim, main scope of this tree ring measurements. Next, please. After we determine the age of the tree, we introduce this age in the NFI database, so we are able to when we assess the distribution by age classes and so on of the forest, we use this very precise information collected from the sampling trees and sample cores. Next, please. The use of the sample cores. As I mentioned, the main aim of the sample cores is the precise determination of the age of the sample trees. Also, the estimation of the forest increment at the end of the first NFI cycle, because as I mentioned, it's not possible to determine this indicator based only one NFI cycle. Studying of growth forest, regional variability of the tree species growth, and eventually develop new growth and yield tables for tree species at regional scale. It's very important, this last aim, let's say, of the and use of the sample cores, because I don't know how it's in Ukraine, but in Romania we have only one growth and yield table for one species all over the country, all over the Romania. So we made some studies and we try to see if the if this is valid even now, or we need to improve that growth and yield tables and to develop new growth and yield tables at regional scale. Next, please. So in this respect, we made a study using some ecoregions. We noticed that there are some differences between species increment across Romania. So we try to do delineate some homogeneous regions with homogeneous conditions of geology, soils, geomorphology, and so on. And we started to see if the increment of the species are different between these ecoregions. Next, please. So we started with three main species in Romania, that means Norway spruce, European beech, and Cecil oak, which are the main three species in Romania. Of course, we use the sample cores only from the ecoregions that correspond to the natural area of the species. That means Norway spruce, we use sample core for Norway spruce collected only from the mountain area, not in the hills or plain areas. So Norway spruce only in the mountain areas, European beech in the mountain and hilly areas, and Cecil oak only in the hills areas. So we made first on univariate analysis, and we see that there are differences between different ecoregions for the increment of each species. Then we try, this is very important to specify that we didn't use only the DB age increment. So diameter breast height increment. We used also basal area increment because, as you notice, for example, at spruce, Norway spruce, you can see that the dBH increment can go down a little in the between the 2000 and 2010, but the basal area increment usually don't. It go also a little bit higher. So after that, we started, next please, covariates analysis. So we use dBH and dBH increment as covariates. And we also notice some patterns in the increment for each species in different ecoregions that determine us to make more detailed analysis. Next, please. Multivariate analysis, and that show us that indeed the species grow differently in the different ecoregions, but not in all. For example, for Norway spruce, we analyze Norway spruce in 7 ecoregions in the mountain area, and we notice that for all ecoregions, the results shown that the delineation of the ecoregions were statistically correct, because the p-value was less than 0.001. But the differences in the increment is not between all the 7 regions. So that means there are similarities between 2 ecoregions. But the other 5 ecoregions, the increment are different. Next, please. We made also hierarchical cluster analysis to see how the groups or ecoregions could be identified using Quartz minimum variance and cubic clustering criterion. As you see, the let's say the shape, it's similar from Norway spruce and European beech, but at a different scale. And Cecil oak has a quite different pattern. Next, please. We made also a canonical discrimination analysis, grouping by ecoregion with canonical variables as axis. So here also the results provide some grouping of the sample core information. So it also confirmed that at least for this species can be elaborate, let's say, new yield and growth tables, growth and yield tables for some ecoregions in Romania. So this is my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, please. But what I want to mention also, as we are neighbor countries, if you are interested, I can invite you to visit our dendrochronological laboratory in Romania to see how in practice to see how we work here, and if you want to do something similar in Ukraine, you are welcome. Thank you.
Jorge, thank you very, very much for this detailed, very interesting presentation. As the subject of today is annual increment as well, my question to you is how many cycles you have done for national inventory in Romania? Is this the first cycle or is the second or?
Is the third one now. So we started the first NFI cycle in 2008. The second one in 2013, and the third one in 2020. Okay. But we collected this sample cores in the first NFI cycle because we cannot estimate the increment based on the two consecutive successive inventories, you know, because it was just one. So we use these incremental cores to estimate forest increment.
You mean that time, but now you are using the differences between the two cycles from current cycle and the last cycle.
Yes, of course, it's more precise. This is usually used in the NFIs that have permanent sample plots. Yeah.
Of course. Okay. Thank you, George. Vitaly, please go ahead with your question.
Ну, я хочу подякувати за
First, let me appreciate for a very informative presentation and this very impressive work you have done. Let me still ask for two clarifications. You say that based on the first cycle, you acquired increment, but what about, well, diameter, that's clear, but as far as the height, how did you establish it during the first cycle? Or how did you go about measuring the height of trees in the first cycle of your national inventory?
Okay, thank you for your question. Very interesting question. We have this issue, let's say, at that time, but we let's say solve these issues based on tree ring measurements. So we measured all the rings, let's say, until 2012. Yes, until the end of the first NFI cycle. Then we had the width of the last 5 rings. So we subtract this length of the diameter, because we know the diameter, and we find out the diameter with 5 years, previous 5 years. So this is regarding the diameter. The height, we developed models for each species, models for height, and similar with the DBA diameter, we find out the height. Based on that model, we find out the height of the tree with in the previous 5 years less. Yes. So we were able to estimate the volume with 5 years in the past, and then we based on species, DBH, and height at that time with previous in the 5 years in the past, we estimate the volume. Then we had the volume at T1 and T2. T1 it's T2 minus 5. So we estimate the increment. As I can say that we estimate at the end of the first NFI cycle, we estimate the increment of 45 million, 45.8 million cubic meters in Romania. And at the end of the second NFI cycle, based on successive measurement method, we find out that the increment is 58 million cubic meters. So quite not is not very close, but is not so far. Mentioned that it was we didn't use all the trees. You can imagine that the trees with the DBH less than 12 centimeters, from which is the threshold from which we collect sample cores. The increment was not estimated, and this is the reason that the difference between 55, 54.8 and 58 million cubic meters.
Thank you very much for this answer. Christina has a question, please. Christina, go ahead.
Дякую, доброго дня. Я хотіла
Good
запитати.
afternoon. I have a question, actually two questions. The first one with regard to subsections of the rings. If I got it right, that the closer you are to the center of a plot, the smaller trees are measured. Or in other words, the smaller diameters. Bigger trees are not measured close to the center of the plot. Did I get it right?
No, it's quite vice versa. So we use that concentric.
То чим ближче до центру ділянки, тим більше дерев.
That is to say, the closer you are measuring to the center of the plot, the thicker trees you are measuring. Is that right?
No, no. So the method of concentric circles, that means that are two concentric circles. In the first of 300 square meters, we measure all the trees with DBH between 5.6 millimeter until 28.5 millimeters. So in the smaller circle. In the larger of 500 square meters, we collect data for all the area of 500 square meters of the trees with a DBH larger than 28.5 millimeters. So a very large tree can be located very close to the center of the plot. So it is not how you call as in Germany.
Дякую.
Thank you.
We don't use the method used in Germany, for example, or in Austria. They use that method based on the Bitterlich, exactly. Bitterlich method, and we don't use this method in Romania. But we use the same method that you use, and if I understood correctly, in Ukraine. You have two concentric circles, it's the same. I think.
Colleagues will answer on that. Thank you, George. Yeah. Please, Christina.
Так, друге питання.
I have that other question. If I got it right, the cores are extracted from the trees that do not exceed this average diameter. How do you use any software in order to establish which is the average diameter when you do those measurements, or you go by sight, so to speak?
So we collect these sample cores from the trees that have the diameter as the average of the diameters measured for the sample trees, or higher, not less, on a specific sample plot. But if there are, if I understood correct your question, if there are not this kind of trees to be core, or what was the question exactly? I didn't understand.
No. You said that you extract cores from average size trees. So how do you do this average? You have some sort of a average size per sample using some software, or you go just by sight? The team looks at the tree, say, "Oh, this is average."
Yes, I understood that. I understand now. No, we don't have a specific software, but you know, they can estimate that the field teams can estimate the average, because they have to collect the sample cores of average or higher. So the average is the minimum DBH, but could go higher if the trees are in the dominant or co-dominant position, in the social position of the stem. So the answer is no, we don't use a specific software.
George, thank you very much. And I hand over to the next question from Heino Pulley, please.
Yeah, George, it seems to me that you have a very professional workflow for core processing and measurement. And of course, this is connected with a lot of work effort and costs. And sure, I think you have thought a lot about this before realizing this processing and before getting it financed. Could you explain for us the disadvantages you see for simple measurement of the cores in the field?
Okay. Yeah. First, when we started our NFI, we know that we knew at that time that there are a lot of data missing, forest data are missing, and we try to collect as many information as possible, including forest soil, sample cores, and so on. But we discussed at the ministry, our ministry, and we decided even that will be a more difficult process, and that will imply more work to do in the field, but a lot of work to do after the data collection, the sample core collection. We decided to do this, and let's say a lot of work is done when the field crew, anyway, they go in the field. And we have a crew, field of 3 persons. For this reason, that there are a lot of work to do. And we collected this sample cores. It was not easy. It's true. It's difficult. We have, I think, we have the greater number of the sample cores in European NFIs. I don't know if other NFIs are 50,000 of sample cores, but for us, we didn't think only of the NFI. We think of the research that we can conduct based on this information. And we already have some results. We are working on this, but let's say it's very difficult to change the conception of the old people in forestry that are used with the old growth hunting tables at the national scale, at the older Romania areas and so on. But we try to do this.
Yeah. You have been able to convince policymakers to give you the money for that. That's good.
Yes, and it's not difficult to convince policymakers to do this new growth and yield tables. It's difficult with the old people in forest, academician and so on.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, I have to say that.
But now you have excellent data.
Yes,
really.
I have.
Now I hand over to Victor Miranyuk. Please, Victor.
Yes. So, thank you for a great presentation. It was really interesting. And I have a question to clarify. So, do you estimate increment using just permanent plots, or you also use cohorts to estimate increment in NFI?
Okay, so as I mentioned, after first NFI cycle, we use this sample course to estimate forest increment. After that, at the second NFI cycle, we use the method of successive inventory in order to estimate forest increment. So this course, for the NFI purpose only, we use this information only after the first NFI cycle. We don't use in the second NFI cycle and in the third NFI cycle the incremental course, and we collected incremental course only in the permanent sample plots, not in the temporary sample plots. We have about 20% of the total number of the sample plots in Romania. Only 20% are temporary sample plots. The rest of 80%, there are permanent sample plots.
Okay, but my question was, do you obtain increment only after remeasurements of the trees, or you estimate from radial increment of tree diameter?
Now we use the information after remeasurement of the sample trees.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Georga. For me now, the time is coming to set the key question. What is the message for Ukraine? I mean, we have measured over years now. We have taken samples by boring the cores from the trees. They are now somewhere hanging around. I'm joking for what reason. Sometimes I'm saying it's kind of a firewood to use it or what. No, there should be a use out of that. And we are now in a situation that for National Forest Inventory, we don't have any information about increment. Maybe we will come back in the project later to explore what are the possibilities to use remote sensing approaches with different years to maybe generate something on increment, but it's not the purpose for today. But today, my question would be to Ukrainian colleagues, dear colleagues, what are your expectations how to use this information from your measurements in the forests? Виктор, Андрей, Виталий, кто может ответить? Не знаю. Никто не хочет.
Я могу ответить, я наименьшее ответственное лицо.
Почув, Віталій.
Я вижу, що Віктор Анатолійович відповідає.
Ні, я зі своєї сторони, що в будь-якому випадку я дякую за можливість таких зустрічей і презентацій, як і румунської сторони, так і інших країн. Якраз ми на сьогодні третій рік і почали проводити. Тому це для нас дуже корисно, і ми будемо думати, як враховувати, видозмінювати, доповнювати свій підхід до тієї роботи, яку ми робимо. Тобто, в будь-якому випадку це цікаво послухати, як ми себе будемо вести і що ми будемо впроваджувати життя. Ну, це ми будемо думати.
Хорошо, будем думать. У нас Виктор Миронюк, вы хотели еще поставить вопрос? Или все?
No, just wanted to add some ideas how why collecting this course are important, because probably we can use not just approaches which can estimate stand increment using remeasurements, but also we can use approximate methods using percentage of increment and total volume to calculate how many cubic meters per hectare we have. So that was my question to presenter to understand if they use this this approach using collected tree cores. But of course, forest management have different approaches, and that is one possible approach when we have radial increment. Then we can calculate how many % of growing volume we have on plot per year, and then we can calculate approximately how many we have average, for example, at country level.
Yes, of course, all this can be done. My question was actually related to, we are doing efforts, we are spending money on collecting information which is now not used, the increment measurements by boring the cores into the trees. Vitaly. Vitaly.
Я все ж скажу ремарку. Ми намагалися відповісти на останньому слайді. Таке дослідження з дендрохронологічне дослідження річних кілець дуже потрібне. І я думаю, що єдина проблема на сьогодні – це не відсутність наукового зацікавленості, а скоріше відсутність коштів на фінансування такого завдання. Те, що центр інвентаризації так чи інакше перевіряє вік чи значення приросту для своєї бази даних, цього недостатньо. Сьогодні зростаюча увага до кліматичних досліджень була б, скажімо, таке дослідження вже зібраного матеріалу було б дуже важливим з тим, щоб повернутися, побачити вплив клімату. Наприклад, з мого досвіду, з регіональних інвентаризацій сучасних, так 10 років назад значно більший радіальний приріст фіксувався на тих самих ділянках, які пройшли переобмір через 10 років. Тому сьогодні це, очевидно, вплив клімату, і серед наявного матеріалу таке дослідження б дало б достовірну оцінку, в яких регіонах це відбувається, які причини. Тому такий матеріал залишати без уваги не можна, і в цьому контексті підходи, які були з лазерним скануванням і отриманням автоматичних оцінок, були б дуже цікаві, наприклад, подумати над автоматизацією цього процесу. Звичайно, що ручний підхід обліку цих кілець – це вже минулий вік. Тому дякую за презентацію, яка дивиться в 21 вік, колегам з Румунії.
Thank you very much. I think this is some kind, like we can use it as a closing words, even some good news. As Vitaly said, climate change can have impact on positive developments of the increment, even more increment. Let's take this as a positive outlook. For sure, I understand as well that we need for further investigations on increment on the base of available data and samples. available in Ukraine, we need money, that's for sure. I mean, but it's already good that our event today made an impact, I think, in relation to thinking about what can be done. We all understand, I think, that increment is an important data and information on forests, especially when we are looking forward on timber supply outlook studies. We need here robust information on increment, and that's why it's important. I think we made a good contribution today to this subject, to this item. I would like to thank you all for your participation, especially all the speakers, Georg and Marin, Mr. Tomasz Gschwanta, and Andrei I Vitali Storozhuk. Special thanks also to the interpreter, Dimitra. Thank you very much for you. If there are not any more significant or at all any questions, then thank you very much for your attention, for being with us. And I'm looking forward to new events of this type, bilateral information exchange with European countries on the implementation of a national forest inventory. Thank you very much.
Thank you, bye.
Georg, mulțumesc.
Cu plăcere.
Yes.
Cu plăcere. Hai, noi
Mulțumesc.
sper să ne vedem.
Yeah,
Sper să ne vedem curând.
and Georg, I hope that we will see you anytime in your country again.
I hope so very soon. I
Yes.
look forward.
Thank you.